Welcome to DAExMachiNation. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you all for joining us on another edition of DAExMachiNation. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robert Jed Rains, my brother from South Crackalacky. Doc is busy working tonight, trying to get orders out for Dark Angel, and Steve is working. So you just have to put up with the two of us rednecks tonight, and hopefully we can keep you entertained. Robbie, how the hell are you, brother?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm alive and kicking so far, but it's early. Travis Drum just became a member, and he's 37 months as a member. Awesome, dude. Thank you. That is badass. That's like over 3 years. Hell yeah. But he said, have you seen the article? They found 2 ancient species of sharks found inside of Kentucky's Mammoth Cave system. I did see that. At a pretty deep depth, they found the fossilized remains of a couple of ancient species of sharks, which mean at some point those caves was flooded, probably by an inland ocean. But I also read another article that said that there are scientists that now theorize that there is more water beneath the Earth's crust than is in all of the oceans combined, like 2 to 3 times. That there is a layer of water deep down that would basically just flood the entire planet. That sounds a lot like a certain other story we've heard where water sprang from the Earth and flooded a planet.
Something about fountains of the deep breaking open,
something like that. And if those remnant species of shark existed in that cave system, makes you wonder if they still exist in that sub ocean.
Well, I've long believed that there was more of the Earth exposed before that event happened, and I think what we're living on is basically a graveyard of what this planet used to look like.
At one time, Ireland was actually part of mainland Europe. All of that was land, but that means the water levels, even with frozen polar caps, the water levels had to rise a few thousand feet because the water between the water of the North Sea is deep. It ain't like, if it dropped 20 feet, the North Sea would dry up. No, it would have to drop hundreds of feet, if not thousands.
Well, I mean, if all that water did come up, where does it go? It almost impossible for it to recede back down if it was locked away. So,
Well, my theory is some sort of large fissure opened to leading to that sub-ocean. And the weight of the Earth's crust forced that water to the surface and then probably closed the fissure. Otherwise, it would have just kept pumping that up because that's a lot of weight of rock sitting on top of that sub-ocean. So if it opened up again, would they be able to stop it? Not until that, enough pressure was relieved or it shoved those mantle pieces back together.
I shall refrain from answering said question, good sir. Trying to do my best Doc impersonation.
I also read an article, and this is like leading science right now. There's a group of scientists, a lot of them geologists, that are now believing that oil didn't come from compressed plant matter and dinosaurs. That was an incorrect assumption they made a long time ago, and that it is actually a renewable resource that is manufactured by the fluids that are at extreme pressure in the depths of the Earth. And if that's the case, are fossil fuels renewable? It was an interesting article. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if the science will bear it out, but it was certainly food for thought.
Yeah.
Kay Bauer says, I saw something about it. Let me bring it up on screen. Find it again. Now I've lost it. I'd say I lost it a long time ago.
Yeah, me too.
No, I saw it. There it is. I just went past it. He says, I saw something about a spot under the surface of the Earth holding 3 times the amount of water on Earth. That's a lot. could have something to do with Noah's Ark. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Give that man a prize.
Yep.
I think very well could be. It was described as the fountains of the deep. That's exactly what that would be.
Yeah. And, for so long, people always focused on the rain being the only source of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that ain't the only source of it.
Right.
That just added to it.
Oh, and folks, before we get started, I want to say continue praying for Miss Lene. She's getting stronger. She's healed up, but she's still getting her energy back. So keep her in your prayers.
Well, she's throwing stuff up in chat as we speak, but that don't mean she's not.
It's back on.
Don't need to.
But keep my family, not me and my boys, but my extended family. A few of my siblings that are dealing with a lot of pretty serious health issues, and I won't go into a lot of detail because it's more than one person. But just keep my brothers and sisters in your prayers. They're dealing with some pretty serious health issues right now, and I'm pretty worried about them. So, but anyway, let's keep this on a more positive note. I don't want to head down a maudlin road. But God, we got quite a few people in the chat already. Well over 100.
Yep.
Chat is
42.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, the chat is flying. Miss Lene, you and the other mods, keep an eye out for questions because the chat is flying by so fast. I'm barely seeing them all. So if you see a question, kind of flag it. I will do my best to try to keep an eye on my messages. If you guys are sending me messages, I'll try to keep an eye on those. But I don't always have my messages up. But please help us keep an eye out for questions as they pop up. Tonight we're going to start talking about. We're going to revisit the old Teddy Roosevelt story. You all familiar with the Bauman Incident. Just as a quick recap, to bring up the Bauman Incident, in 1885, Teddy Roosevelt released a book called The Wilderness Hunter. This was years before he ran for president. He was still just a hunter. He'd traveled all over the American West. He'd hunted in lots of places, and he told one of the first times ever seen in print a story of a Bigfoot attack. Not just an attack, but it killed somebody. And the story is very creepy. But the thing that struck me always the most about that story was the level of detail in that story. Robbie's read the story. I've read the story, and Robbie can tell you just as easy as I can from interviewing eyewitnesses from crime scenes. You don't ever get that level of detail out of somebody. If somebody said, something weird attacked me and I ran in the house, they're not going to describe what type of front door they've got. They're not going to describe how they get their living room arranged. They're going to tell you what they saw and very little else. They're going to tell you what the person looked like, if you even get a good description. But Teddy Roosevelt described details that only someone who was there would know. And yes, Teddy was an outdoorsman, so he probably had a pretty good idea about some of these things. But Teddy also had a political career in mind, and in my opinion, he didn't want to come forward and say, hey, I saw a Bigfoot, because people were going to think he's crazy and not vote for him. Now, flash forward a few years, we all know Teddy Roosevelt was one of the driving forces behind animal conservation and the national park system. We've been kind of talking about this theory for the last at least couple of years, and it's kind of popping up on other channels and in other locations that Teddy Roosevelt was indeed Bowman, and therefore he had knowledge of cryptids when he helped create the National Park Service. And to me, that just makes a hell of a lot of sense, especially given what we know about, him setting aside the Ozark National Forest in Arkansas specifically for the Ozarks howler. So Teddy knew about cryptids, and for Teddy to do all of that, to me, it goes more than just somebody. Somebody just told him they saw a Bigfoot one time, and he believed him. The dude legitimately believed So he put a lot of his time and energy into protecting him. So to me, that's more telling than anything that he was indeed Bauman. Now you can agree or disagree, but there are a lot of circumstantial things that point toward him being Bauman, like the fact that Bauman was never given a first name. Again, and on top of that, Bauman never came forward. No guy ever stepped up after that book, The Wilderness Hunter, came out and said, "Yeah, that was me," because people talk, especially in bars or over campfires. People talk. Someone would have eventually said, "Yeah, that was me," but nobody ever came forward. His first name was never given. And when Teddy Roosevelt was in college on the East Coast, I believe it was Yale. It was either Yale or Harvard. He was one of the Ivy League big schools, and he was on the sculling team, the rowing team. And his position was the point man, the very front guy in the little, it's a scull is what they call it. He was the front man in the boat, and the front man's position is called the bowman. And that was his nickname through college because he rode on the team. He was known as Bowman. So when you look at the fact that his nickname was Bowman in college, he wrote the story with more detail than somebody who just heard the story over a campfire. And Bowman was never given a first name or ever came forward. I still say very strongly that I believe Teddy Roosevelt was Bowman. Robbie, what do you think?
100% agree. I mean, there's just, we talk about totality of the circumstances and, the preponderance of evidence, all those nice cop terms that you and I used our entire career. And, I mean, they coined those phrases for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's because when you start looking at, all indicate, like, it's just like when you go into a house and you start investigating something and you see one thing that points over here. Okay, well, interesting, but doesn't tip the case, doesn't make the case or whatever. You find something else. Ooh, that's interesting too. Put that in the file, and you start piling up all this stuff, and you get to what you call the totality of the situation and the preponderance of evidence, which means it's overwhelmingly evident that it's a pretty good chance. We use the term probable cause and reasonable suspicion. Well, reasonable suspicion is basically what would a reasonable man think. Probable cause just means it probably happened. And I think with all the evidence that DA's pointed out, that we've talked about for 2-3 years, however long it is, I think we've gone into the probable cause area.
I think we've definitely probable cause.
Yeah, I think
I've gotten warrants on less.
Yeah, I believe we're beyond reasonable suspicion at this point, because I can just see some campaign manager saying, "No, sir, Mr. Roosevelt, you cannot say that. You're about to go run for the presidency. You can't do that." Okay, I'll do it this way.
Now it's fiction.
Yeah.
Although every other story in The Wilderness Hunter is a story that happened to him. Every story is about something he did in the Old West, while hunting. It was his exploits while hunting. The Bauman story is the only story that's not about him. Vicki Dennison said she's listening tonight, kind of laid up in the hospital for the next week. Oh, she had a heart attack. That's not good. Well, we're glad it wasn't a major one. We'll all be praying for you, Vicki. Hope you get to feeling better. Thank you for letting us know. And someone asked when my next book was coming out. I'm trying to scroll back and see who that was. John Wayne. John Wayne Gates says, "Hey, DA, when's your next book coming out?" Dead of Winter is done. All I'm waiting on is final cover. And my artist is working on it now. Hopefully he has something for me soon. I'll probably message him later tonight, see if he's got any kind of status report. But I've given him everything he needs. It's just a matter of him finishing the cover. So book's ready to launch. Everything's ready to go, just waiting on that final cover. So as soon as I have it, I'll make an announcement. I'll probably go live for a short period of time, and I'll tell everybody on the Patreon and everything when it's going to go live. But really, literally, all I'm waiting on is final cover. Pete had a quick question for both of us. He said, quick question for both you and Robbie. What color should I paint my Bigfoot plywood cutout? Dark brown, probably. I'd probably go with a dark brown.
Yeah, that's dark brown with gray tips. If you get the little fur tips coming out.
I would primer it before you paint it, because one, it'll help seal the plywood so it doesn't warp when it gets wet, but it'll also help you get a much more even coat, and you won't see like the grain of the plywood coming through. Okay, well, that wasn't 1885, it was 1889 when Wilderness Hunter was released. Now the valley where this took place, where the Bauman Incident happened, the only thing that it was said in the book was that it was in a valley between the Salmon River and the Upper Wisdom River. Now, I spent about an hour last night on Google Earth tracking those rivers, and I found an area that I think might be where this happened. And weirdly enough, when you look at it on Google Earth, it's blacked out. You can't see it. You can see the wood lines all around it, but that valley is completely dark. You can't zoom in on it. You can zoom in, but you get nothing. It's just black.
And we found that before on other things too.
Yes, we have. So I don't know if I'm right that's the valley, but it's blacked out for whatever reason. So here's the kicker about this. If the Bauman Incident were the only thing to happen in that valley, that would be one thing. But when you dig into that valley and the lore in that area, it's only the beginning. Over the last 130 years, there have been dozens of disappearances in and around that valley, and we're going to cover some of them tonight. In 1903, brothers Eli and Andrew Mason, they were prospectors, professional prospectors. They'd been doing it for years. They headed into the valley. Little did they know they were retracing Bauman's actual original route. They were looking for quartz and gold deposits. Again, experienced miners. On their third night in the valley, they heard something pacing outside their camp. In the dark, never got in where they could see it. They could hear it pacing back and forth. But the next morning, they found massive footprints in and around their camp after they'd fallen asleep. And something had come into camp and scattered their supplies. Nothing was taken, not even food. It was just scattered around. So was their tools. And standing right in the middle of their camp, right where they could see it, was a pickaxe. One of their pickaxes had been driven into the ground. And from the description I read, it sounds to me like it was driven in handle first. So it was just sitting there where they would see it. To me, that sounds like a warning. But on the fourth night they were there, the footsteps came closer. And Andrew sat guard while Eli went to sleep, and they were going to trade off. While Eli was sleeping, the creature came up to the edge of the light. And Eli said he could see its eyes and face just staring at him from the edge of the firelight. It didn't come into camp. It sat there staring at him. And I guess at some point he dozed off because when the sun was coming up, it was gone. Never heard a sound, never made a noise, but it was gone. And by the time the sun come up, they were so freaking unnerved that they packed up their stuff and they fled the valley. Neither one of them disappeared. They both got out of the valley, but for over a year after fleeing, they didn't talk about it with anybody, not even each other. That to me, that's the most telling, because those guys, like I said, they were experienced prospectors, and they were so freaking terrified. They basically just did what Bowman did. They pulled up stakes and got the hell out of there as fast as they could go. And while nobody disappeared, that marks a trend. Robbie, you want to talk about the next one?
That's what I was about to tell you before you started. You said you sent it to the co-host chat, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing in there except that video you sent earlier.
Let me check. Maybe I sent it to the wrong thing. Give me just a minute.
I thought maybe I just misheard you because you were saying it as we were starting the countdown, so then I couldn't ask you.
It still says it's sending. What the hell?
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just too big of a file to send.
It's a 2-page document. Hey, hold on. Let me log into my email and I'll just email it to you. Sorry, folks. I thought this was already, or the notes were already sent, but apparently the
So you said you're going to email it?
yeah, apparently
Yeah.
the Facebook Messenger is not wanting to cooperate. I hear the kitty cat.
Yep.
Okay, just a second. I will have this attached.
She was agreeing with you that it didn't want to cooperate.
God dang it. Why do they got to be a pain in the butt like that? You wouldn't let me send it until I closed out of it.
Yeah.
All right. It is on its way. Just sent it. All right. Let me open it back up. So I've got it.
Somebody's needy today. There we go.
And folks, believe me when I say these accounts only get weirder.
Okay. So you just did the 1903 Andrew and Eli
Yep.
Mason, right?
Right. You're at
So,
1917.
1917. 1917, a logging crew sent timber cruisers into the valley to look for good stands of timber to cut. Jacob Reed went missing, and the others searched for him for hours, shouting, firing gunshots in the air, and even climbing trees to try to see him. The only thing they found was at the base of a rocky outcropping. Harold Dunn, one of the loggers, found Reed's hat torn apart, along with his knife, which was broken. There was no blood, no sign of a body, and no sign of a struggle, just large prints leaving the area as they fled into the valley. The logging company canceled the job and stopped all attempts to log the valley.
And that dude was never found. No trace of him. Jacob Reed. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked with anybody in the logging industry. Those timber cruiser guys are about as tough as they come. Those guys are, tougher than boot leather.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an occupation where, the weak sort themselves out pretty fast.
Yeah, there's a reason Ray Stevens chose that profession in that song, the haircut.
I'm a logger.
I'm a logger.
It's up from Coons Bay, Ontario.
I was out logging trees.
Okay, well, here's where this story starts taking a turn. Yeah, we had a guy disappear. We had something killed Bauman. It killed Bauman's partner, and Bauman fled. But in the 1920s, a researcher from Oregon State University named Dr. William Lorne began investigating the valley and interviewing people that lived in the region. People, nobody lived in the valley, and nobody does to this day. But there were settlements that were within several miles. So, settlements in the area, he began interviewing people. He collected dozens of stories that had never been reported before. Missing hunters, hikers, timbermen, campers, and other people that just went missing in that valley and were never reported missing. Dr. Lorne, after going into the valley, he didn't say what happened, but he quit his job at the university and became kind of a recluse. He refused to even speak on the matter. All he would say was, and this is a direct quote. This was the only thing he would say on it from after it happened. He said, "What lives in those woods is not ours to understand. I don't believe it's a creature. I think it's a presence, and it doesn't want to be seen."
Ooh, that's kind of spooky.
That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And that was a college professor. That one to me just kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies because of that quote. That's a great quote. It's a terrifying quote, but the fact that he collected literally dozens of other accounts of people that went missing in or around that valley, that and whatever happened to his notes, we'll never know, because he either destroyed them or never shared them, one of the two, because he just, after he left that valley, he was done.
But how many times do we hear stories that are identical to that? People who have hunted their entire life and have encounters like that, and like the guy you talk about all the time is sold all his hunting gear and is like, yeah, I left a $500 stand out in the woods. You want it? I'll tell you where it's at, but I ain't going back out there. I mean,
that has that effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, we hear stories like that all the time, and so 150 years apart, you're hearing the same types of stories, that don't change. Do you want your camera time? Jumped up behind me just so she could get up here. Get your tail off camera.
Barry Beezer says, I had to step away. Are we linking Teddy in Nahanni Valley? No, not the Nahanni Valley, the same valley where the Bauman incident happened. And that's right on, from what I can tell, that's right on the Montana-Idaho border up in the mountains, in the Bitterroot Mountains, to be precise.
She never does this. I don't know why she's... I don't know what's different about tonight that she wants to do.
She just wants some attention. You want to jump onto the next one?
Yep. All right. Let's see. That was 1920s you just did, right?
Yeah, the next one's 1942, top of the next page.
1942. I'm just going to say triple C. So I don't...
Do you know what CCC workers are? My dad during the Great Depression worked in the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Okay.
Basically, it was an attempt to create jobs to help during the Great Depression, and they went out and they fought fires and they cleared forest land and made trails and helped build the national parks. So the CCC Corps, were basically just people that were employed to do that kind of thing, work in the forestry divisions, work in the national parks, that kind of thing. And I don't know if it still exists, but I know my dad was part of it when he was in his teens.
Never heard of it. Anyway, CCC workers came to clear old trails that had been covered by a landslide. The trails that went through the edge of the valley, or they were the trails that went through the edge of the valley. 3 men went into the valley, but only 2 came out again. Samuel Colby Moss was only 50 yards ahead of the others, or the other 2, when they lost sight of him, and he was never seen again. The other 2 fled the valley and quit their jobs, vowing to never return to the valley again.
So they saw something. No, it wasn't just the fact that that guy went missing. Something terrified those guys.
Yeah, I mean,
and in 1942, jobs were our nation was still recovering from the Great Depression. If you had a job, you didn't quit it because you might not get another one.
Yeah, and the thing is, I get it that it would probably be, emotional losing somebody like that. But if somebody just disappears, what makes you say you're not ever going to go into that place again just because of somebody? I mean, people get lost all the time. I mean, look at the news, and that happens all the time. So obviously, there was something else that happened that drove that.
Yeah, obviously they were terrified.
Yeah, that's the story I get from it.
Miss Neoma said, I'll just put it up. She said, I worked in the Youth Conservation Corps when I was a teen. It was a way for students to get extra credits toward degrees in ecology and the like. So it is still around. It just has a different name. But my dad worked for it back during the Great Depression. My dad was born in 1924. So, my dad's a little older than most people in my generation. Just, that comes with, being a farm kid and being the youngest of 11, I guess.
Yep. Well, that's,
Thanks, 2A. You may go ahead. Sorry, but.
Oh, yeah. My dad was, my stepdad was the oldest of 7. So that's why my uncle is only about 8 years older than me. And, my grandpa Constance was probably, if he'd have been alive today too, would have probably been around the same age as your dad, because he was in the very first part of World War II. He carried a BAR. Takes a man to carry one of them rifles around in battle.
A bar is no joke. Oh yeah. But like I was saying, when the country was recovering from the Great Depression, people didn't just quit jobs. I mean, it was rare to get one, and for them to say nope, not setting foot in that valley again, something scared those guys. Something they either didn't talk about or nobody would listen to them about. But one guy went completely missing. Never found a trace of him.
More than likely, back then you didn't have stuff like NDAs and the Men in Black. So, I'm not saying that they didn't exist back then, but the government conspiracy or cover up or the things that people have to deal with nowadays probably was not. If it existed, it wasn't as bad back then.
Right.
So I don't think it was government intimidation that caused them to say and do those type things.
All right, the next little bit is a little bit more modern times. This one's in 1997. Charles Wilburn, a 52-year-old retired wildlife biologist from Boise, Idaho, took a solo hiking trip through the backwoods of Montana. He was writing and researching a book on predator behavior. Specifically, what he was researching is how apex predators like wolves, bears, and mountain lions, how their behavior, how they respond to long-term human absence. If it changes their patterns. He was looking into if the lack of humans in an area changed their behaviors at all, which to me is kind of interesting to know. But I would imagine they're probably very different when there's not a two-legged predator in the area.
Yeah.
But anyway, he filed a hiking permit, planned his route, and shared it with the authorities. He made sure that the local rangers and because that really isn't too terribly far from Yellowstone. But anyway, he shared it with people in the area and wanted to make sure they knew, like we always tell you when you go out, make sure somebody knew where he was at, what his route was, and when he was supposed to be back. So he filed a hiking plan. He also carried a GPS beacon, which was set up to ping his location every 12 hours. And to him, it was just a routine trip. He'd done this many times, hiking into the backcountry, doing research for this book on predators. On the evening of the third day of his expedition, his GPS didn't check in. It didn't ping, and they didn't think anything of it. They figured it was probably just terrain, because you get in some of those deep valleys and canyons, and you lose not only phone signal, but you can lose signal from just about anything else, especially if the tree canopy's thick. But they didn't think too terribly much of it. They thought maybe it was something about the terrain that was messing with the signal, and they would be fine. Well, the next morning, it didn't ping again. So then they got a little worried because it should have. He shouldn't have missed 2 check-ins. So they sent in a team. And they made it to his last known location, which was right on the edge of the valley. He wasn't actually in the valley. He was on the ridge above the valley. They found his tent. It was still set up. His campsite was completely intact, as if nothing had been touched. The tent was set up. All his gear was inside the tent. His food was hung the way it should be to keep bears out of it from a tree a little ways away. They found that. Food was still there. All of his gear was there. The campfire had gone out. It was long cold. There's no sign that it had been used recently. And there were no signs of a struggle. The only thing that stood out was they found his notebook laying open on the ground with half a page written. The last entry was half a page. The last line was what freaked him out. The last line says, "It's been watching me since morning, upright, and it doesn't flinch." And that was the last line. An 11-day search was mounted in the area to look for him. They used drones, dogs, helicopters, and over 70 volunteers combed that area looking for any sign of him. This is the part where it gets really freaking weird. On the 9th day, a drone using thermal picked up the body heat of a person standing in the open in the middle of a field of brush. He wasn't in the trees. He was just standing in the open. So they relayed the information to the helicopters, and one of the helicopters, the search choppers, goes into the area, and there's nobody there. But the drone's still showing the thermal. They're still picking up a thermal of a person standing in the open part of this field, but there's nobody there. And as the chopper gets closer, the thermal just fades away. And they don't know what caused it. The thermal was there, and then it just faded away. It didn't walk away. It didn't drop into the ground. It just kind of dissipated. And then they never saw it again. Some people thought it was just a glitch, while other people's weren't quite so sure. The story was silenced, though. Nothing was given to the press. The search was simply just called off. The official report filed by the Rangers was Wilburn, Charles, presumed deceased, most likely killed in an animal encounter. The case was closed, and all footage that was taken by the drones and the helicopters was accidentally deleted in what they called a server crash. A server crash that somehow wiped out the hard drives of the drones, the backup hard drives,
server crashing, all the hammer,
and the backup server. Yeah, how does that happen? How does a glitch destroy media on 3 different formats? But it did. They lost
because that glitch had an east wing across the side of it.
Yeah, no kidding. But all of the data was lost, and the only reason that came forward is some of the volunteers talked about it. But the U.S. government has apparently been quietly monitoring that section of valley since the Bauman incident. Why would the government want to watch that section of valley? Why would they, quietly monitor it? But they have, and every decade or so, more people go missing in that area. But it's never too many people. It's not like groups. 1, maybe 2 people will go missing every few years. Not enough to really warrant less like sending in troops into that area to try to figure out what's going on. But it is steady, and it happens all the time.
Well, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but listening to you tell that story, you remember the movie Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman? Mm-hmm. When he came in to the village at first, and he killed one of the vampire brides, and he was expecting everybody to be all happy and everything. They're like, "Why'd you do that? Now you're going to bring them down on us." They never take more than they can eat, 1, maybe 2 a month or whatever it was. Think of the parallel with that maybe that's why the government is watching these places, and it's not that they're keeping them in there, and if 1, 2, 3 people get, as Doc would like to say, get it, it keeps them from moving out into the general populace.
Rodney, they've never named the valley as far as I've been able to find. It's the only locations I've been able to glean out of all of these accounts is that the valley lies somewhere between the Salmon River and the upper reaches of the Wisdom River. Now, I've searched the Wisdom River and I can't find a river named Wisdom. There's a town named Wisdom in Montana, but there's not a river unless it's the river that runs right next to Wisdom, Montana, because I can't find a name for that river. Not on Google Maps, I can't. But it also says that it's in the Bitterroots. So that area is the Bitterroot Mountains. That's between what I suspect is those rivers. And when I was digging in, that's when I found that dark spot. I don't know why. But I think, and it's a big valley. For that to be completely darked out is pretty interesting. But there's also an abandoned mining camp just outside that valley. The locals call it the Flat Step because there used to be a trail there called the Flat Step Trail. But the mining camp, an entire mining camp, was abandoned. This is not even in the valley. It's on the slopes just outside the valley. So my guess is they got into something and they said, you know what, this ain't worth it. And just abandon the entire mining camp.
Why does all this sound awfully familiar? Is there a reason that...
Talk about life imitating art?
Whoo, boy, you start talking, I was like... And people in the chat, some of you know, and you know what I'm saying, but some of you will know what I'm saying, if you know what I'm saying.
Especially if you're in the alpha group.
Miss Naoma, does this, or it's not Miss Naoma, I'm sorry, Miss Lene, does this not sound familiar?
That's good to know. Miss Naoma, she says the Wisdom River is now known as the Big Hole River.
Well, that's what Rodney just said. Is it called the Big Hole?
Okay, well, okay, Rodney, I guess that's it. If we can find the valley that's between the Salmon River and the upper parts of the Big Hole River, that explains why I couldn't find it. You want to take the next one?
Yeah, it's not going to top that one, but I'll do it.
This one's pretty damn good, though.
2008, getting a little newer in time. Two teenage brothers, Kyle and Mason Devereaux, went hiking in that area. They were experienced hikers and knew the woods and the area, but they'd never gone into the valley before. Kyle would later tell his father that they heard something in that valley. Not footsteps, they were not footsteps. It was like heavy breathing coming from somewhere in the trees. They never saw anything, and afterwards Mason refused to go back in the woods for more than a decade, saying that he still would hear the breathing sometimes coming from the woods near their house. A little following incident.
And these are two kids that grew up running the Montana woods. One of them refused to go back into the woods for a decade. What did they see that they didn't want to tell? You know, clearly, if you saw a Bigfoot and didn't think anybody believe you, would you tell anybody? But they both described that same breathing, and said they would even hear it in their dreams sometimes. But then the younger one, Mason, was saying that he would hear it in the woods behind their house, and for a decade he wouldn't even go back into the woods.
That's pretty dang freaky. You hear that in the woods, it scares you out of the woods, and all of a sudden you start hearing it at your house too. Yeah, that'd make me not want to go back in the woods more than no, probably not.
Well, yeah, I know, we're idiots. See, the thing is there's only really two real reactions that people have when they encounter something like that, especially if they didn't believe it existed at all. Either they become incredibly curious and want to know more about the things, or in a lot of cases, like even with some cops I know and deer hunters, they're done. They're not set foot in the woods again. Now that they know those things out there, they don't want to go anywhere near them. I know a guy that quit his job in law enforcement because he didn't want to run into one on a call. He was afraid. He was afraid every time he took a call. He was a county guy. It wasn't a city cop, but he left the sheriff's department and became a phone repairman because he did not want to run into one of those things on a call out in the county. and he was constantly terrified that every call he went to at a residence, especially prowler calls, that he was going to run into one. Miss Naomi's absolutely right. Just when it comes to Bigfoot, either you have to accept that you're crazy or you have to go out to the woods and prove it. prove that Bigfoot's out there, or prove that you're crazy.
Hey, DA, check the co-host chat. I just copied and pasted something that Rodney just sent me.
Okay.
Just kind of, I know you know this, but just kind of validates what you were just talking about, or a minute ago anyway.
The area had a reputation for being dangerous. Well, with that information, I'm going to see if I can find that valley. Now, it's probably not something that we're going to be able to plan an expedition anytime soon, but
I always wanted to go to Montana.
Well, if we're gonna make that kind of outing, somebody needs to get a Desert Eagle 50.
I get a Deagle. Take it to the train station, baby.
Damn right. And if we do actually manage to get an expedition up there, it's going to have to be on horseback.
Yep.
Either that or hike, because there are no roads leading to that valley.
I could probably. I know some horse people.
I might have a contact up in that area that would be able to hook us up. Okay. Y'all ready for more? Because we are just getting started on this valley.
Don't get it.
K. Bauer says Robbie will. He got Sezzle. Go Sezzle himself a Desert Eagle 50. After shooting that one of Jenkins, man, I want one. I love how that thing shoots. Granted, it's an expensive party favor to feed, but if you need to knock something down and make sure it stays there.
If I get one, I got to do a lot of practicing because apparently Jed can draw that deagle pretty quick. So I got to work on it.
All right, folks. This one happened in 2019. That's 6 years ago. Freelance photographer Anna Wexley decided to hike into the valley. She was well known for her wildlife and nature photography, landscape photography. My brother does that. My brother's a landscape photographer. She spent 3 weeks at the valley's edge, documenting migration paths of birds. She was careful never to go deeper into the valley. In a series of photos taken on a 4-second timer, a whole series of photos, she captured something on film. Movement behind the trees. The details were blurry, but the time lapse, you could actually see a tall, dark figure moving from tree trunk to tree trunk. Couldn't really ever see much more than that it was just a tall, dark shape moving on 2 legs between the trees. And it was never in the center of the frame. It was always off toward the edge. But in the final photo of that series that she took, you could see a single yellow eye of something leaning out from behind a tree. The pine tree that it was leaning out behind was easily to identify. It was a twisted trunk, gnarled old pine. So they went to the exact tree to examine it, only to find that pine tree had every bit of the bark stripped off of it to between 12 and 15 feet up. No claw marks, just like something had peeled the bark. And we've talked about that before. Pine bark, there's medicinal purposes for it. You can also use it in bedding. It keeps certain insects away. Spruce bark is good for good for medicine, and cedar bark will keep bugs out of your bed. But pine bark and spruce bark both have medicinal purposes. No claw marks on the tree at all. No animal trails in the area. It was just peeled, like you would grab a hold of chunks of it and work it off. She left the area and refused to speak about it. The only thing she would say was, "Something watched me for days, and it never left."
A lot of this stuff reminds me of some of our soirees into Combs Ferry.
Yeah, because we knew we were being watched. It just never came closer.
Mm-hmm. And no claw marks on trees, but finding cedar trees.
Cedar and spruce both stripped to well above where we could reach. Wyatt was there. He saw how high up some of that stuff had been stripped.
Yep. So, but just listening to some of this stuff, I'm like, that we've experienced some of that stuff before.
Mm-hmm. Those eerie silences in the woods, feeling of being watched, but you could never get a look at it. Being paced.
Johnny and I have been paced up here.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, just about every time we went in there and came out, we got paced out. So I'd say that is a normal everyday behavior for them.
I would agree. Folks, you think it's gotten weird so far? This next bit, the one Robbie's fixing to read, this one's going to make you think. And this was just 4 years ago.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
2021. Trails to the valley had been mostly erased from maps of the area by both local and federal agencies. No restricted zones or warnings posted, but quietly trail maps were changed. Routes that once passed into or near the valley were rerouted away from it. Old paths were reclassified as overgrown, unmaintained, high risk due to wildlife, or lost due to landslide. Only no wildlife was ever mentioned in the reports on any of the missing people. In late 2021, a veteran tracker, well, that hits close to home.
Yeah, it does. This one's going to hit close to home for you.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. A veteran tracker disappeared on a solo expedition in the Bitterroot Mountains. He was an ex-military, 48 years old, and had more than 2 decades of wilderness experience. He'd taken a week off-grid to document signs of elk migration in the area. His GPS pings were tracked and followed his planned route until the 4th day, when they stopped completely. He had a panic beacon, which was not activated, nor did he radio for help. A search team followed his trail into the valley. They followed his trail, finding his tracks and markers that he'd placed on trees to indicate his route. Then, without warning, the trail just stopped. No descent into water, no signs of a fall or a struggle. His last marker was nailed into a pine facing west. After that, the trail was completely clean. One of the searchers, a young ranger named Leo Hunt, quit 2 weeks after the search was concluded. He kept a private journal during the search. The journal was later shared anonymously in an online forum. One passage stood out. Hunt described the valley as walking into a room that doesn't want you there, like the trees were holding their breath, or the ground might shift under your feet if you stay there too long. He also said, "We didn't lose Micah, the missing tracker. The woods just took him." The same week, a wildlife camera placed near the outer perimeter of the valley was triggered 17 times in 3 days. Each time, the camera caught only a blur of movement. It was too fast and too close for the camera to catch. In some cases, it was obscured by a light fog that didn't match the weather reports of the area. After the final image, the camera went offline completely. The last image captured what was a smear of vertical motion, as if something moved past the lens, and what looked like claws. The footage was recovered remotely, but the camera was never found. Is that it?
Yeah, the next one's starts another one. That one, the dude was an experienced tracker, military veteran. He was also something they didn't mention. He was armed. He was well armed, because the area has been, they have grizzlies sighted in the area. So the dude went up there armed for grizzly. An experienced military, experienced hiker, experienced outdoorsman, professional tracker, went missing without firing a shot.
Hmm.
And nothing was found of his gear or anything. He was just gone.
Yeah. But
It's like he was going into the valley. Like I said, it was marking the trails. Trail markers, you'll take like a little piece of ribbon or something that you can spot to mark your way back out. He nailed that to a tree, and it's like he nailed that to a tree, turned around and vanished because the trail went no further.
just blazing a trail. You can do that by cutting limbs, cutting chunks out of trees, putting ribbons up. That's not just a tracking thing. That's hunters do that all the time. You put those little bright eyes on trees so they can shine a flashlight on it and see where they're.
Robbie, let me describe a scenario for you.
Okay.
Let's say you're that tracker. Okay. You're going through this valley. You're marking your trail. You're blazing your trail. So one, you could either find your way back out or someone can follow you. And you hang a marker, and then you turn and walk past one of those blinds like we found at Joe Bald. What's going to happen?
Well, if you didn't see it and there's something waiting for you in it,
I can tell you for a fact, I knew where you were and couldn't see you from 10 feet away.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I think
if he walked by a blind like that, he never would have seen what got him. He'd have been on top of it and it on top of him before he knew it was even there.
Man, that's the thing. You were looking for me.
I knew what you were wearing and where you were, and I couldn't see you.
So if he's out there looking for elk and signs of elk, I mean, I don't know, experienced tracker, but what kind of tracker was he experiencing? Just going out looking for, tracking deer, elk, things like that, because being able to read a track is kind of universal if you know what you're looking for. But I'd like to think with him being former military that he had some situational awareness. And I would really like to think that since he went out there well armed, thinking there was grizzly out there, he was having situational awareness. But, you still, if you're not.
Well, they said the trail stopped abruptly. Just came to a complete stop. Nothing leading away in any direction. The trail just ended. There's one direction it could have went. Up.
There again, that sounds really familiar for some reason.
Reach down, grab somebody by the freaking neck, and whoop, right up in the tree they go.
Well, they did not go in, or they did not walk out. Sorry, my accent sucks, but
I don't know. Just that one really gets me because this guy wasn't just some teenage kid that knew the woods. He wasn't just, some guy who went out to film or just some guy that happened to work for a logging company. This was a military veteran, armed, experienced tracker, experienced outdoorsman that was completely taken by surprise. That's Ellis 420 Stoner says, can we play Spot the Cougar again? Talking about what's the word I'm looking for?
Adaptive camouflage.
Yeah. Let me pull up an image and share with folks. Let's see if I still got it. I know I should.
Kevin just handed out 5 memberships.
Hey, thank you, Kevin.
Way to go, Kev.
And congratulations to everybody that got a membership.
Looks like
thank you so much, dude.
Vincent Ellison, Michelle N., Missouri Broad, C. Blanton, and T. Davis all got memberships.
Okay, this may not be the exact image, but this is a great example of adaptive camouflage. You bring this rascal up. Where's the snow leopard? And big congratulations to all. This is a perfect example of adaptive camouflage. The snow leopard is not invisible. It didn't walk through a portal. It didn't teleport off the mountainside. It is sitting still, and you can't see it. Let me do a little something. Let's me roll that in just a little bit more. See if it just jumps out at you. Maybe in this area right here.
No, I mean, literally, I don't have it on the screen. It ain't popping up on my screen.
Really? I wonder why it does that.
Sometimes it'll pop up. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll take it a minute. I mean, I know it's on there because it's showing it on my phone, but it's for some reason, I guess, from the co-host side of things, everything doesn't show up for me for some reason.
Yeah, I posted this on all of my channels.
I mean, I've seen it before.
But there he is. There's that snow leopard. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But when you roll it back out, and if that thing ain't moving, you could walk right up on that damn thing before you saw it.
Huh? I mean, just how many people step on copperheads every year? Them are some of the best camouflage snakes there are.
Here we go. I got a few others. I got a few other images talking about, walking up on something and not seeing it. There's a person right there in the middle. Now, that's not the best camouflage I've ever seen. But if you were walking down the trail not expecting there to be something in that image, you'd probably walk right up on that.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, to me, the gun is the only thing that breaks those two guys up. And that one right there, that is perfect use of adaptive camouflage. He looks just like
these are just guys. Wait till we get to some of these others. That's another dude with a bow.
Mm-hmm. But that looks just like a bow hung in a tree. So does that.
Mm-hmm. See the tiger?
Picture's kind of blurry, so I can't see anything on that one.
There's a mountain lion right here.
I have to take your word for it. It just looks blurry on my side.
See him?
Yeah, I see the face now.
Okay, everybody probably immediately sees the elk, but do you see the mountain lion?
Yeah, I've seen this one before. Isn't he down towards the bottom? Or is that another one I'm thinking of?
Not quite toward the bottom. He's kind of in the middle. He's right here. There's a mountain lion right back there watching him from behind that rock. Can you spot the kitty in this one?
Yep. In the little cave opening.
Yep.
And that's that same one again. Did
the
cat move, or is the cat still where it's at?
I'm not 100% sure where the cat is in this one. I think I lost it. Oh, nope, there it is. Right there. See its face?
Oh, yeah, I see it. Good gracious, that thing is well camouflaged.
And, it ain't invisible. He ain't using no portals. He ain't cloaking. He didn't get beamed up to the the Starship Enterprise. He's just standing still. Not sure if I should say anything about this one. Just let people look for a minute.
Yeah, just let them look.
Move it in just a little bit more. It's right there.
Dang.
You can see its ear and both of
Yep.
its eyes.
Shh.
Oh, there's a second one in there.
Yeah, I see it now.
I only saw the one. You see this one?
Yep, wolf right there next to the tree.
Yep.
I think I sent you that one.
Yeah, you did.
I'll
See
see
it?
the giraffe.
Yeah. There's a freaking, 14-foot freaking giraffe over here.
But I mean, it's well camouflaged.
See that one?
Oh yeah, there's the.
Got a pronghorn up there.
Yeah, I saw it by the time you put the cursor on it.
You know what? I don't even know where this one's at. I put the image in there, but I don't even see what I'm looking for. I know there's something in the image. I just don't know where it is.
I mean, hit good, whatever it is. Wait a minute, back down. Go back down a little bit. Okay, that's just a rock. I thought that might have been a seal or something.
Well, I know I included this in with the pictures for. Oh, there it is. It's right there. It's just laying there. It's like a cat, like a lynx or something. See it?
Yeah.
See the spots?
Yep, I see him. Curled up.
That's a Missouri nope rope. Well, Missouri, they ain't only in Missouri, but damn copperheads. That's right there in the center.
Yep. Heads out there are curled up right there on his side.
There's you a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this one's another Missouri nope rope.
Yep. Was this the one where there was two, or just the one? Because there was one, there was two of them in it. I just can't remember.
I think this just has one.
Because I only see the one. But I know there's one of them in here that we have that has two copperheads coiled up in the same picture.
Right here.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think this. I think this is on, or it's just a single one. This is one with just one too.
Again, it ain't invisible. It ain't cloaked. It hadn't teleported. It didn't go through a portal. It's just laying still, and it's naturally adapted to its environment. That little rascal is right here. That is a copperhead.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. And that is why hikers get bit every year. You see the hoot owl?
Oh, I seen. I think all most of the owl pictures I sent you for that
Mhm.
that show. I think I sent you that one too.
I think you did. And that's all of the ones I've got. We still need to find that doll sheep video. I can't find it.
I can't either. I've looked everywhere for that thing. I've searched all over YouTube.
Blood-laced anarchist says that's why we need to produce more anti-venom. Yeah, because you get bit. Sometimes it takes multiple vials to get it out of your system. Okay, y'all ready for the next one? In 2022, this was early winter of 2022. A documentary crew applied for access to film a segment on forgotten wilderness myths of the Northwest. It was a 3-person team. They were licensed and insured with years of experience filming in remote areas of the world. So going out into the wilderness was nothing new for this team. They had no criminal history. They were granted a partial permit, allowing them to film up to a certain elevation. They were told specifically not to camp beyond the ridge of the valley. They didn't listen. The footage that was recovered from their equipment, from their drones and their primary cameras, was seized and never fully released. But one of the searchers found one of their SD cards and released it. What we know comes from a backup SD card that was found in their gear. One of the last bits of footage taken by them was one of the team, a woman named Bree, who was walking through a clearing when she turned the camera toward herself and said, "I don't think we're alone in this valley. There's no wind, no birds, but something is watching us. We keep finding broken branches 9 to 10 feet in the air. No animal that we know of does that." Then she said something softly that was very hard to hear. So she said, "I think it's waiting for us to leave, or maybe for one of us to wander off on their own." That was the last known moment of contact. The crew was declared missing and no new information has ever been released. But all of their primary cameras, including their drones, were all seized. The only way any of this got out is somebody on an online forum leaked the contents of that SD card. The next one is where things start getting spicy.
You mean they get weirder than they already have?
Yeah, because this one's when you realize that someone is shutting this up on purpose.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
In 2023 is when this happened. A private security contractor was hired to assist in wildlife prevention strategies.
Wildfire.
Oh, wildfire. Excuse me. Wildfire. It's all wild. They submitted a request form for thermal scans and elevation mapping over a 60-mile stretch, which included the Salmon Wisdom Ridge area. The application was standard, but the sudden and vehement denial was not. Sounds like a dot word. Vehement. Not by the Forest Service or the state, but from a federal agency that refused to disclose a reason for denial. The project was immediately suspended. Later, internal emails were leaked, anonymously revealed unusual instructions. One read, "Cease mapping operations in the upper sector. Focus only on the southern perimeter. No unmanned drone activity is allowed within Zone Echo." The name Zone Echo does not appear on any civilian maps of the area, but it does seem to match the exact location of the valley and the incidents which have happened over the past 130 plus years. What's in this valley that requires federal oversight? The same year, an ecologist named Grant Hollis was working independently to document soil anomalies in the high basin forest when he disappeared along the ridge. He'd filed a detailed itinerary and was expected back in 4 days. When he didn't return, a team was sent in, and they found his tent collapsed, half zipped from the inside. There was no signs of a struggle, and no tracks were found leaving the site. Not even wind damage. They did find his field journal tucked inside of his sleeping bag. The last entry was written in shaky, uneven handwriting. It read, "Something knows I'm here. Not just watching, it's aware of me. I don't think it wants me to go." Just trying to make sure I read that right. I don't think it wants me to go. Yeah, that's what it said. That was the last entry. Search teams combed the area for 2 weeks. Not even a scrap of fabric or a broken branch was found.
So
I thought I might have misread that, and it said, "I think it wants me to go," but that's why I looked at it. I was like, no, it said, "I don't think it wants me to go," meaning I ain't getting out of here.
Zone Echo. There's no map I have found that's marked Zone Echo.
Well, I mean, that's pure, military law enforcement type speak.
Yeah, because maps aren't generally broken down into zones that civilians use.
No.
Got a Miss Lene says, "I found the sheep video and sent it to you." Oh, awesome! Thank you, Miss Lene. You are awesome. The bunch of you guys in the chat tonight are ex-military, ex-law enforcement. There's a lot of experience in the chat. Have any of y'all ever heard the use when detailing maps, other than on military maps? Have you ever heard them used as zones, like Zone Echo? And Echo is definitely military phonetics, because law enforcement doesn't use that same military phonetic.
Yeah, we
if
do.
it was no. With the ones we use here, they use names instead of E would be.
We use Alpha, Bravo, Foxtrot, Charlie, Echo, Delta. That's what we use.
Our department didn't. Our department uses. I had to learn a whole new phonetic alphabet when I went to the academy. B is Baker, A is Abel, Abel, Baker, Charlie, Edward, David.
Some agencies use it because we've got guys that come in from other states or whatever, and they'll do that. But South Carolina is very paramilitary in their training, and Rodney will tell you we use Alpha, Bravo, Foxtrot, Charlie, Echo, Delta, Golf. I mean, we use the exact same.
We should have. I mean, it makes more sense to use that, but in Missouri, law enforcement doesn't use it.
We do.
Rodney says Big Hole River runs between national parks and all near Big Hole National Battlefield.
Because
that's an area that's heavily protected.
Because even our call signs, we use my call sign's a Charlie number. So, in the sheriff's offices, their shifts are out. For their shift for A, they do say Adam, but everything else is Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo.
Yeah, I don't know why and law enforcement doesn't just use the same military. Because if things ever get really bad, like if we've got a national, like for example, when the tornadoes took out Joplin, there was National Guard there and law enforcement working hand in hand. On the radio, saying Abel, Baker, Charlie is going to make less sense to the guys in the military. Like, are you mean Alpha, Bravo, Charlie?
Yep.
To me, it makes more sense to everybody use the same one.
But like Rodney pointed out, we use zones too. Like we specifically had at one time had the city cut up into zones, making it easier.
Greene County, we had the county broke up into zones. But that was only for our use. I mean, if you look on any civilian map of Greene County, it doesn't say anything about zones.
Well, same with us. I mean, that was just on our maps that we had where it was broke up into zones, and it was to make it easier for us to know, where each other was and things like that. And the county, you've heard it in my book. You know, that's how they refer to it: Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is civilians don't.
Right. I'm just saying that, you know, that's military and law enforcement terms saying don't go into Zone Echo.
See, Steve's Missouri Leo. He knows. Adam Boy Charles, Edward Frank George Henry, India John King Lincoln. Yeah, there was a time I could just rattle them off, but yeah, Missouri, and it's also I mentioned this in Dead of Winter, but yeah, that book's not out yet, unfortunately. As soon as the cover's done, it will be. But what I mentioned is that a lot of agencies just use plain speak on the radio now instead of the old 10 codes, because even those vary from department to department.
Well,
Ready for the next one?
Sorry. Somebody had wrote. Oh, I was just reading what somebody wrote. Yes, I'm in.
Miss Lene, did you Miss Lene, did you email that to me or send it to me in chat, because I didn't see it? Okay. This is the most recent one that I found in association with this same valley. In 2024, a retired cartographer, that's a map maker for those who don't know dock words, retired cartographer Julie Mathers, who had spent over 3 decades mapping uncharted terrain in the American Northwest, visited the region alone. Her goal was to retrace and map the lost trails marked by early fur trappers. She wanted to find what she referred to as the forgotten arteries of the American wilderness. She was never reported missing because she came back, but she came back different. Her friends say she stopped answering phone calls, closed down her studio, and erased all of her digital archives. When a colleague finally went to her home to find out what was going on, they found hundreds of hand-drawn maps. Some were drawn on parchment, some were burned into wood, and others were etched into bone. They were all maps of the same valley. But she still will not speak publicly about what happened to her while she's in the valley. But she was so driven by what she saw. She's a cartographer. She made literally hundreds of hand-drawn maps of that valley just over and over again. The same year, a group of amateur survivalists live streamed their trek into the woods. This I'm going to see if I can find, because I don't know the name of the channel, but I've got to see if I can find this live stream. They live streamed setting up camp and even joked that they were now in quote-unquote Bigfoot country. That night, the feed went dark for 46 seconds. You could still hear the audio, but for 46 seconds it went dark. And while it was dark, they heard a guttural voice that they could not identify as anybody in the group. They heard a guttural voice say the word closer. And then a strange groan, just like a kind of groan like that. Then the stream dies. Only one member of the group was found, and they found him 3 days later. The guy was barefoot and completely covered in dirt. He was unable to speak and has not said a word since.
No, there ain't nothing suspicious about that. What you talking about?
I would love to have been able to find the notes from the professor that recorded that area in the 1920s, because he logged literally dozens of local stories of people going missing in and around that valley. I would love to be able to find that lost treasure trove. But he was a scientist in the 20s. I guarantee he's long gone. And unless somebody runs across some of his papers in like an old dresser or something, we'll probably never know. But yeah, for the last 130 to God knows how long, people have been going missing in and around this valley. And here's the weird part. It's even weirder. The people that have, yeah, it's all weird, but this is where it gets even weirder. It used to never leave the valley. They said that you were fine if you stayed off the ridge and didn't go in the valley. But local hunters have now noticed that the woods are getting quiet farther out. Birds and animals have changed their migratory paths. They don't fly over that valley or the woods around it. More and more trails are getting closed for unexplained reasons, and whatever's in that valley is moving out of the valley now. Maybe their population's growing, or maybe they just looking for more victims. Bill, we don't know the name of the valley. The valley is never formally given a name. It's the valley where the Bauman Incident happened from Teddy Roosevelt's book, The Wilderness Hunter. And over the last 130 plus years, literally dozens of people have gone missing in or around that valley. And we don't know the name of the valley because it's not officially marked on any maps. We just know roughly the location. It's in the Bitterroot Mountains between the Salmon and the Upper Wisdom River, which is now known as the Big Hole River. LS42 and 420 Stoner says they're expanding their territory. That's kind of what I think.
Yep.
I think they've started expanding their territory. And one thing that one phrase that keeps popping up in all of those accounts is they talk about how eerily silent it is whenever they realize they're being watched. And if they say, if you get in there and you feel like you're being watched, it's probably already too late.
Because we've gotten out into situations like that when it's been dead quiet and we felt like we've been watched. But it's never felt, I ain't gonna say never, but usually it doesn't feel like it's a bad situation, or for the most part anyway. It usually feels like, okay, they know we're here, or it knows we're here, or whatever knows we're here.
White says, so this is like the Nahanni Valley. In the Nahanni, they keep finding headless bodies. In this valley, the only body that was ever spotted was the one Bowman spotted. Whenever somebody goes in that valley and disappears, they don't find them.
Yeah, I don't. And so it seems like if anybody goes in there and has some kind of bad experience, they come back changed.
Check this out. Thad Brown says, DA, talk to Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. They know where you want to go. They've been there. I would definitely like to get a hold of those guys then. Do you have a contact information for them by any chance? I don't know anybody with Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, but I would definitely like to talk to them. LS420 says, here's what we must consider. There can't be just one Bigfoot. Oh yeah, there's God knows how many of them are out there. There's got to be a breeding population of Bigfoot. So I'm going to crunch the numbers needed to prevent an inbred population. Okay. Well, I would definitely like to hear, at least what do you call that? Swag? Scientific wild ass guess?
Yep. Scientific wild ass guess.
I'd like to know roughly, just kind of a rough estimate, how many of these things could possibly be out there. And, when we were doing the show, when we were talking about the national parks and stuff, and we started factoring in state parks and public use areas and wildlife management areas and Bureau of Land Management and all of that, found out it was over a billion with a B protected acres. There could probably be a lot more than we realize. Oh, check this out. Patrick Hughes says, my brother flew C-130s and a drone platform in Iraq and Afghanistan. He stood at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene. He, my wife, and I saw something wild last year. Scared my brother bad. What'd you see? Who? Hillary says she imagines that there's at least 50,000 in this country alone. Probably more if they travel the deep caves like we think. Tyler 420 says, I just subscribed. Hey, welcome to the family. We're a dysfunctional family, but we put the fun in dysfunctional.
Yep. For sure.
Hillary says we don't bite usually. So this valley is way more than we ever thought.
Oh yeah, I mean,
the Bauman incident is just the tip of the spear.
Well, that's just what got us interested in it, and
Right.
Here we are. We thought all this time that it's just been happened to be the spot where Teddy Roosevelt had an encounter, but it seems like it's a hotbed.
And, I've talked to a lot of guys who are hunters who blew me off when I mentioned Bigfoot. They're like, I've been going in the woods all of my life and I've never seen anything like that. Yes, I get that. I understand that. But here's the thing. Like the camouflage images we were showing, until we pointed some of those out, you never saw them. And if they were in the woods waiting on a deer, they ain't looking for an upright bipedal ape, especially one that don't want to be found. And now we can debate whether or not Bigfoot is an ape or whether you think it's, a type of humanoid but at the end of the day, humans are on the primate spectrum as well. So, if they exist somewhere between us and mountain gorillas, they're on the primate species. They're a primate species as well. Just how intelligent they are is what the debate is.
And the differences genetically between chimpanzees, the orangutans, the gorillas, to us, people like to get hung up on 98%, but that 2% translates into 12 million DNA differences.
Yeah, that's a lot of differences.
How just because just because you say, well, it's not an ape, it's not. That doesn't mean it's human either, because it could be 99% well, and that could translate into what, 6 million different codes of DNA or lines
Something
of DNA.
Like that.
So I mean, just because it may not be the exact same as a mountain gorilla or a chimpanzee or an orangutan or us, doesn't mean that it just means that it's somewhere in that same.
Dude, Miss Lene came through.
Check
this out. Yep. Can you see it?
I don't know yet. It usually takes it a second before it'll pop up. I can see it on my phone, but I can't see it on the big screen yet. There it goes.
Well, okay. This is the doll sheep video.
Save this dang video.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm going to download a copy of it, so I've always got it, and make sure we've all got copies of it. This is the infamous doll sheep video. You won't see a move until after someone takes a shot at one. But take a look at this, and if you've got a keen eye, you should be able to spot. Well, let me make this.
Just say some.
Yeah, you should be able to spot some. Now, help you all out with that. There's one right here. There's one right here. One right here. Where do you see another one? Oh, right there.
The first one. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So that's what, 4 that I can see.
So place your bets, folks. How many you think's in this shot? Only if
some of these are laying right in the open. This one's kind of camouflaged. This one's sort of camouflaged. These two are out in the open in the rocks, so they're kind of easy to see. But let's just see how many there really are. And this is the greatest example of adaptive camouflage that I can put out. And this is when people say, I've been in the woods and I never saw a Bigfoot. You didn't see these deer, these doll sheep either. Now, watch this video and see how many pop up and take off. The thing is if you're going through the woods and there could be a dozen big animals, because these are not small. These probably weigh 120, 130 pounds a piece. These are not small animals, and they're hiding here, right here in this image. You just can't see them. Now imagine a much thicker, dense forest with half a dozen Bigfoot that don't want to be found. Okay, anyone want to make? Anybody want to take any guesses?
Before you do that, Larry Breland had the best comment I've seen. He said, "How many deer hunters spend more than 10 days in a year in the woods anyway?"
Very much true. And they generally hunt the same place over and over. We're creatures of habit. We find a place we like to hunt, and that's where we go back.
Especially if you see sign.
Leadlace says 27. All right, y'all ready? Here we go. One more time for y'all who missed it. Now watch carefully. Oops. Watch carefully right over in this section, right in here. You will see a puff of dirt. That's a hunter takes a shot, probably at this one. And I got to say, this guy is a terrible shot, but he doesn't realize what he's about to kick up. So,
well, that's a lucky sheep, one or the other.
Yeah. So pretty bad shot, especially on something that ain't moving. Watch this area. Boom, there's the dust. Shot strikes right out in here. There's well over 20. Wyatt says they take their shots from really far away, though. Yeah, but if you're going to miss by that much, you either need to be closer or you need a better scope, because that is a big miss. What they say, what they used to teach us, aim small, miss small.
Miss small.
That guy wasn't aiming small. That one was like firing an artillery piece. It probably wasn't even within 6 feet of it. Antonio Vasquez says, I count for 52. Doesn't surprise me. Well, let's hit that one more time. Just what the heck. Let me bring that back up just once more.
Go one more again.
Yeah. Robbie, let me know when it pops up on your end, because I want to make sure it's popped up for everybody.
It popped up.
Okay. Here we go. There's the puff of smoke from the rifle, and they start moving.
I don't care how many times I see that video. It just never ceases to amaze me how many of them things are just crammed into that area.
Yeah. And again, they didn't portal in. They didn't teleport in. They weren't invisible. And the Starship Enterprise didn't beam them in. They were just perfectly still and camouflaged. This is the perfect example of adaptive camouflage. And to me, that is a far more believable explanation on why we can't spot Bigfoot, because it's wearing basically a natural ghillie suit. And if it's got clear hair shafts, like has been postulated, they've been found by researchers all over the United States. Bigfoot hair samples with clear hair shafts, if they have those clear hair shafts, they are going to be far better at blending in than those Dall sheep because they don't. It's just one of those cases. Well, like in the Freeman footage, Paul Freeman's filming, and that Bigfoot is walking across the screen, and is a large, dark, either dark brown or black individual, and it stops in front of a green pine tree and disappears. It didn't turn invisible. It didn't walk through a portal. It didn't get beamed up by Scotty. It just stops, goes still, and the clear hair shafts picked up the color of the light around it, and it vanished from sight. And as soon as it realized that Paul Freeman was still coming, it starts walking again. And as soon as it starts walking again, it's right there. It's plain obvious to see. But when it's not moving, it's naturally camouflaged. That is adaptive camouflage at its best.
Yep.
Yeah. Antonio Vasquez has just imagined if all those were dogmen. Casey says there's so many of them, I don't know how he missed one. Yeah, you just about could have shot at random into that clearing and got a Dall sheep.
And who knows? He may have, and it never stood up.
Right. But he hit that rock, and I don't see anything around that rock.
I mean, it could have blew through the rock. I'm just saying that, you know, if it was hid that good, he might have, and we might just not know that he hit.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm grabbing myself another Irish soda.
Keep rubbing it in.
Sorry. I did lose the bottle cap, though. So, what do you guys think? Which do you think is more likely? That they're cloaking, or they're just incredibly good at camouflage?
You know what I think.
Nightly 45 says, I don't think he could have hit one if he had a fully automatic rifle. Not if he missed by that much. Oh, okay. Melissa has a good question. Melissa Montgomery says, been watching for a couple months. Just really appreciate your honest forthrightness. But can you please describe what a clear hair shaft is? Robbie, you want to take this one?
Basically,
I've been running my mouth a lot, so all you.
Well, I don't know if I'm the best one to explain it or not, but I try. Basically, and the example that I always give is when I ask people what color is a polar bear. 9 out of 10 people say a polar bear is white. DA, what color is a polar bear?
Polar bear's black.
Its skin
or
is
dark
black.
gray.
Yeah. But it appears white because most of the time you see a polar bear in its natural setting, which is in the snow. And I've had people say, "Well, what about in zoos? They look white in zoos." Well, they look clear because that's what the fur is not white; it's clear, and it's clear because it reflects light. It's like a fiber optic cable.
Right. And the latest generation of ghillie suits have fiber optics in them to allow them to blend into the colors around them.
So think back. If anybody's like me, and I know DA's has seen these because it's the first time I said it, he's like, I've seen that, and I didn't even think about it. If you've watched any of these nature shows, National Geographic, any of that stuff like that, and you've seen polar bears hunting, like they show polar bears hunting seals, they'll show them sitting in front of one of those breathing holes that seals will use, sitting down like this with their paws in front of their nose. Why is that? It's that way because if a seal's coming up to get air, and he looks up and sees that big black polar bear nose looking down at him, chances are they're not going to come up and get air out of that hole, they're gonna go into another one. Seal don't come up out of that hole, polar bear don't eat. So
Right.
they're hunting. They look like, if they're hunched down like that and they got their paws in front of their face or in front of that nose, they just look like a big ice flow or a big snowdrift. That's adaptive camouflage. They appear solid white because that's where they hunt. That's where their element is, and that's what they have to blend into, and what they have to camouflage in. So, without knowing or being able to get into all the technical terms, the clear hair shaft just kind of, it may not be completely clear in terms of, it may have some color, especially towards the end that connects to the body, but the upper, what's the follicle? Is that what that's called? Or I know there's like 5 or 6 different pieces of actual hair, but anyway, the part close or away from, or furthest away from the body, that's where you're going to get that clear color, and that's if they're standing in front of a green tree, the light shining through that is going to make that appear. You're going to see the green behind it, and it's going to make the hair blend in with what's behind it. That's why the Freeman footage is the best one to watch for that. You see this creature that appears black, and I'm assuming that most of the hair closer to its body is black. It walks in front of that green tree and then just disappears, like DA's talking about.
I bet the undercoat's black and the outer coat has more of the clear shafts.
Probably. Well, and that's why, we talk about the polar bear skin. That's why the polar bear skin is black, because black absorbs heat. They live in the Arctic. They need something that's going to
Trap
that heat in and bring that heat in. That's why their skin is black, or like DA said, in some cases dark gray.
Hillary says, DA and Robbie, what do you think of the claim there's chlorophyll in Sasquatch hair? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would find chlorophyll in a living organism like an animal, unless they're finding traces of moss or something that they might be rubbing on themselves to help hide themselves.
Remember that sample that I found that we thought was hair, and we sent it to Doug, and he said that he gets that a lot of times. It was some kind of moss or something. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe because he said
that's why they're finding chlorophyll, because it's actually moss.
He said that was a very common thing, that because it looks just. I swore that's what it was. I mean, DLT. I'm like, look, we found hair. So we sent it to Doug, and it was like, he's like, no. He said this, but now we found it inside that little cave that looked like a sleeping area. So maybe they had put that moss in there to kind of as a padding to sleep on.
Well, mountain men have been using moss, like gathering moss to make beds with for a couple hundred years.
He didn't call it old man. It was something different. I know what old man's beard is, but he called it something. Now maybe that was just he was using the technical term, but that's not what he said it was. Do you remember
Patrick Hughes? No, I don't remember what he called it. Patrick Hughes says, are you guys familiar with Jonathan Dover, a Navajo Ranger on UPAR's LA YouTube video, law enforcement paranormal investigator? I've seen some videos with him in it. I don't know him personally. I'd love to be able to get him on the show, but I don't have any way to contact him. Mr. Duffy 81 says Spanish moss. Could be Spanish moss.
And up in the upper foothills of Pickens County. I don't think
maybe not. I know we got Spanish moss all over the South.
I don't think we got Spanish moss up here. I mean, we might, but
I think I saw Spanish moss when we were in Myrtle Beach, but that's right there on the coast.
Yeah. I could see it down around Charleston and places like that, around the swampy areas, but I don't think up here in the foothill mountains. I could be wrong. I don't claim to know every species of plant we've got up here, but
But when we look back at this, at specifically this valley, for one of another name, we can just start calling it the Bauman Valley. Patrick Hughes, thank you for subscribing. But for whatever we want to call it, the Bauman Valley seems to fit just as much as anything, because as far as I know, it doesn't actually have a name other than Zone Echo. There's been a lot of really bizarre disappearances and strange occurrences that have happened to and in around that valley. 2 people and even the survivors who got out of there were never the same. So something very bizarre is going there, and it looks like very much like our government had made a concerted effort to keep people out of there. They're even going so far as to remove the old trails from the maps. That is, to me, highly indicative that something weird is going on in that valley. The government doesn't waste time on random valleys unless they have a reason to. And if our belief is correct, and Teddy Roosevelt was Bauman, it certainly would explain why the government kept an eye on that valley.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that.
It would explain a hell of a lot why the government still watches it, because Teddy set it in place. Because it wasn't long after that book was released that he became president. What year? I gotta have to look that up. He became the book was released in 1889, and he became president on September 14th, 1901, following the assassination of President William McKinley. And then in 1904, he won the vote. So that was a full 12 years before that book came out. A full 12 years before he was vice president. So he definitely had political aspirations.
I'm just trying to find. It says several mosses can be described as looking like human or looking like hair, but the most common is the hair cap moss. Now, does this sound familiar? Polytrichum. Polytrichum SPP is at the end of it. That's the professional or the not professional name, but you know what I mean. That's the scientific name for it. That kind of sounds familiar to me.
Hillary says, Robbie, it was Alex Petikov from Small Town Monsters who found Old Man's beard in Alaska, and at first they thought it was hair. So that could explain why some people have said Bigfoot's hair contains chlorophyll. It's entirely possible what they found was either this moss, or that in order to increase their natural camouflage ability, that Bigfoot sometimes actually puts some of that moss on their fur.
Yep. Well, I'm looking at Spanish moss right in a picture. Spanish moss. It definitely was not that, because that's not what it looked like. But there's a few others on here that kind of do look like it, and one of them is that hair cap moss.
Hillary says there's 7 different kinds of Old Man's beard.
Well, I think it was is what I'm talking about, because that looks like what I had.
Mr. Duffy 81 says the hair has algae growing on it, and that happens in a lot of animals. Sloths have had algae growing on them. Were recorded numerous times having algae growing on them. There have been species of bear that had like green algae on their fur. So, yeah,
look at all the pictures of alligators that just swimming along and have algae growing all over their backs and things like that. I mean, granted, they live in an environment that would have, but algae grows on things.
McDuffie 81 says, just heard a lady on Bigfoot Society say she saw a green juvenile in a tree. Well, if it was up a tree surrounded by green leaves and it wasn't moving, it's highly likely that the clear hair shafts would reflect that green. Yeah, Kevin Bode says, look at a sloth. Sloths often have algae growing on them. Your cat's just very, very wanting to be on camera tonight.
I know. She's photogenic tonight. This is like the 4th time she's jumped up in a chair, and she normally just lays over there on the bed and doesn't even care when I'm on. But somebody's wanting to be on camera tonight.
McDuffie 81 says, I don't think they're just blending in with clear hair. It's entirely possible, but to me, it makes more sense, especially when you watch the Paul Freeman footage, than just saying that they have a natural cloaking ability or that they can turn invisible or anything like that. To me, it's just I want to find scientific explanations for some of the things, some of their behaviors that we can't explain, like what people refer to as cloaking. To me, it makes far more sense that it is some form of natural adaptive camouflage, because that exists across the animal kingdom. And we've said many times that really you need look no further than the animal kingdom itself to explain a lot of these behaviors. I mean, that video we watched on the doll sheep, I mean, that was just like scrub pines and brush and a rocky ground. Had that been deep woods with thick underbrush, God knows what could have hidden in there and you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, I mean, so we're not saying that that our explanation we're giving is 100%. Well, this is just what we believe. I mean, Mr. Duffy, if you want to, whatever you want to believe, that's completely totally.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're not.
There are no experts in this field. Trust me.
And we're not. For me to say they're black at night because the blacks are, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you see them standing in front of a tree, it's one color and they just kind of fade into that color. What I believe causes that is they have clear hair shafts at the end of their fur, hair, whatever you want to call it, that works just like a fiber optic cable and allows the light to pass through, and you see the color behind it, and it just allows them to blend in. That we see that in nature. I'm just trying to give you my explanation for why I think this. If you think something else, completely and totally up to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong, and because none of us know. That's the whole thing. Nobody's an expert at this. It's just that's what we feel makes the most sense to us.
Yeah, and again, there are no experts in this field, and anybody tells you they are has got something to sell. We're not claiming that we've got all the answers. We're just trying to come up with the best, most logical explanation we can find for the some of the lesser explainable behaviors that people have reported. It's, to me, it just natural adaptive camouflage makes more logical sense. That's physically something you can collect as evidence. That's physically something you can explain without going off into paranormal explanations. And maybe the creature is paranormal at some level, but we don't know. And we're having a hard enough time convincing people that they're animals and they exist without adding in dimensional travel, telepathy, and teleportation.
Yeah. I don't have clear hair shaft, Mr. Duffy. I know you can see my hair. You're missing the whole point of what we're talking about. If you want to believe something different, that's fine. You don't have to believe.
Oh,
yeah. I honestly, I don't care what you believe. I know you don't care what I believe. This is why we're discussing this. I'm not here to start an argument about it. I was asked what a clear hair shaft was. I'm explaining that, and I think that's what an example of it is.
Mr. Duffy says, I've seen the clear ones, but not all of them are clear. I've seen weird coloration. Yeah, exactly. Ghillie suits are not one color. And those clear hair shafts would be for redirecting the color of the light around them. And if you look at like a wolf, it's not uniform colored. There's, that their pelt is a natural adaptation to allow them to blend in. That's natural camouflage. Same thing with pretty much any other animal. It's a survival mechanism for them to be able to blend into their surroundings. Some of them are better at it than others. Like, for example, if any of y'all have ever gone deer hunting, first day of deer season, those deer ain't moving. And because of that, they're very hard to find. Oh, Mr. Duffy, no, don't worry about it. We're not, we're here to kind of, that's kind of the whole point of this conversation, is to challenge preconceived notions. I don't want to just, assume, like Robbie was saying, you can't go from point A to point Z. You've got to explore every step in between, because once you jump to point Z, there's no place for you to go, but you've got to backpedal. So I would rather, start looking for physical explanations until they don't bear out. And to me, the best possible explanation is some form of adaptive camouflage.
Yeah. It, like he said, if we're trying to explain this, you start, okay, well, I believe that they have some type of adaptive camouflage. If they don't, and it's something else, you move on to the next step. If you say, I believe they walk into portals. Well, if they don't walk into portals, and that's found out somehow, where do you go from there? You've already went all the way to the very end of what could possibly be, and so that's what I'm saying. For us, it makes more sense to say, okay, this is a common occurrence in nature. Why can it not happen with them? Now, does that mean I have all the answers and can answer all the questions about the people? No, but find me somebody out here who actually does have all the answers about these things, and then ask them, okay, well, where are they then? Why don't you have specimens? Why don't you have, if you know everything about them? And you're not going to get that answer because, like we said, there are no experts. Everybody's got their own opinions. And,
Bobby, I agree, brother. Hold on. Here we go. There was a question. Mr. Duffy says, what do you guys think the best form of physical evidence, pics, video, or of creatures aside? The problem is we've all, and I guarantee you've probably seen one of these videos floating around. Have you seen the AI videos where Bigfoot's vlogging in the woods, where he's filming and talks and runs into his cousin Yeti and all of that? Those AI videos that people are putting out are so freaking good. It is, and AI technology has come so far that it's going to be very difficult for us to accept any video or image at face value for the foreseeable future until they can come up with a foolproof way to spot a AI video. I believe physical evidence and hairs, scat, footprints, eyewitnesses are going to be far more believable than any kind of video or photographic evidence, except for ones like the Patterson Gimlin film, which there was no AI video technology back in 1967 when that was filmed. Paul Freeman film that was filmed on a camcorder. The AI video technology didn't exist when that was filmed. Anything filmed after about 3 or 4 years ago is going to have to be scrutinized heavily. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to look for hair samples. We're going to look for tracks. We're going to try to get thermal image in the woods. We're going to try to get video image, because unless you know and can personally attest to the authenticity of the film, you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. And that's just an unfortunate reality of the way things are. Because I can tell you right now, Robbie, Doc, and I, and my son Noah, we are never, ever going to fake a video. We might show you a video and go, tell us what you think you see in this video. Kind of like with the Joe Bald video. I don't tell you what to think. I ask you what you see. Because I personally think we captured a dog man in that video. I really do. There are people that don't agree, and that's their prerogative. Not everybody's going to see the same thing. But I truly believe we captured something. And the encounters we've had out in the woods, there's definitely something out there. And it's one of those things where Unfortunately, far too many people are looking to get internet famous or get their 15 minutes of fame, and they're gonna post hoax crap. And then you've also got and you guys will pardon my French here, what I refer to as bullshitography, where somebody will take a picture of a freaking bush and put 47 red circles on it, and somebody's going to claim they see 19 Bigfoot and 14 dogmen in it. Red circle photography, red circles don't do this field any good, because pareidolia is a thing. Our minds are designed to look for patterns, and if you stare at a red circle long enough, you're going to see some sort of pattern. You may not look like a Bigfoot. It might look like, Mighty Mouse, but you're going to see some sort of pattern. Your brain is hardwired to look for them. That's why I don't put a whole lot of stock in anything red circle. Now, if there's something legitimately in it, that's one thing. But 99% of the time when I see one of those red circle images, it's just bushes or a tree. And the people that swear they can see, 14 dogmen and 97 Bigfoot in that one little circle are not doing this field any good. In fact, if anything, they're doing more harm than good, because they make us all look like a bunch of kooks.
Yep.
McDuffie says, I'm writing a song about red circle fakers. I'd love to hear it, man. That would be awesome. LS420 Stoner says, thankfully, there are tools to tell if something is a deep fake or not. At least they work for now. But every year, that AI gets better. In fact, those videos that float around of the Bigfoot vlogger, dude, those videos, if you'd showed those to somebody, and it was just a video of no talking, none of that, just a video of that quality of Bigfoot walking around a campsite, and you showed that somebody 10 years ago, they would be just mind blown at how good that video is. And unfortunately, anytime we get images that are that clear, we really have to suspect them, because I think the clear hair shafts also explain some of the blurry images. Because if it's moving and it's in sunlight, and those clear hair shafts are picking up and redirecting light, and as fast as a digital camera shutter moves, I think you're getting light refraction, and I think that's why we get so many blurry photos. Robbie, what do you think, bud?
I agree with you. I mean, like you said, it's so hard to trust anything right now. I mean, you open up Facebook or Instagram on any given day, and you see these stupid videos with the orca jumping up on the boat and grabbing the dog and taking it off in the woods, and then or off in the water, and here comes the eagle that saves it and brings it back to. It's everywhere, and it's scary how much better it's getting, almost day by day. So it's just.
Oh, okay. One of the mods said Bill has a question. He says, I like to study the physical signs that they make, and I see across many geographical areas. Does anyone have a good idea of what some of these signs mean? X is a common one. I don't know that there's any really good guides on what some of these signs mean. But one thing we've noticed here, and then I've talked to about a half a dozen researchers here in the Southwest Missouri region, and I don't know if this applies to across the board, but one of the things we've discovered is a lot of those tree arches where they take a sapling and bend it over so it grows that way, seem to mark areas with medicinal plants. Now, I don't know if that holds true across the country, but here locally, that does seem to like a lot of spruce, a lot of other other plants that are natural remedies. It seems to, like E.D. Testerman out on his land, he found a couple of tree bows, and they were all around where it looked like a bunch of spruce saplings had come up. So I don't know if there's any one explanation for what these mean. You ask half a dozen different researchers, and you're probably going to get half a dozen different answers. But I think some things are very definitely territorial markers. I think deer parts and fish heads and trees are territorial markers. At least we learned that one.
Almost learned it the hard way.
Damn right. Al Bertrand 453 says Todd Standing had them photos before AI and people crap all over him to this day. Well, that's kind of a touchy subject with a lot of folks. I don't know Todd, never met the man, so I can't speak to the quality of the man's character. I don't know him. I'm not going to cast any dispersions, but there's some interesting side-by-side comparisons that have been done with some of his images. And then when it was released to the public that his wife is a special effects makeup artist, got really dubious about the veracity of those photos. So I'm not going to say whether or not they're real or fake. I don't know. But I know there's some things came out, and they did a side-by-side comparison with one of them with Todd's face and the eyes, nose, and mouth all lined up perfectly. So all I can say is there's enough out there about Todd's videos and images to make me skeptical. Don't know the man. I can't. I'm not going to take any shots at the dude, but let's just say I'm skeptical.
We're almost 2 hours and 20 minutes in, just in case you.
Oh, okay. Mr. Duffy says Matt from Bigfoot Crossroads says there's a puppeteer from Canada who is camming up since parting ways with Todd. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, we are after the top of the hour. We're probably going to start winding things down. Folks, if you haven't had a chance, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you guys think we've earned it. I think this is a topic we're probably going to get back to. I want to do some more digging, see if I can find more disappearances, and if I can get a hold of those guys over at Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, maybe I can get one of them to come on and talk about actually being there if they've been there. That would be pretty cool. Folks, I just want to give you guys a big thank you for all your support for joining us and hanging out with us. Don't forget to check out some of our affiliates, the good folks over at Dark Angel Medical. It's darkangelmedical.com. Use discount code cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. And they package birthdays in boxes. So if you want a med kit, you'll get the best. I carry a Dark Angel kit with me every day, and don't trust your life to anything cheap because at some point you will probably need a med kit, and the life you save could very well be your own. Also, check out the good folks over at Scallywag Tactical, making some of the best blades in the business. Absolute fantastic quality knives. And they've got a whole new crop of them out. So check them out at scallywagtactical.com. And don't forget to use discount code DARoberts10 for 10% off your entire purchase. Also, check out the good folks over at Sigwo Arms, sigwoarms.com. I got one of their cards. I'll just show you that. Sigwo, Sigwo. They do custom work. They got suppressors. They've got custom ARs. They handle just about anything. And if you're one of those folks that's interested in a codename Wild Hunt AR, upper or lower or both, they are the ones that are licensed to do all the stuff for codename Wild Hunt. So check them out. Check them out and let them know we sent you. And if you contact Sigwo, tell Cody we sent you, and he'll hook you up. He's a good kid. And having said that, I want to mention something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. So reach out to your friends and family who are first responders or veterans or active duty. Anybody that's served in uniform, reach out to them. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care. Because you never know. Your voice may be what keeps them off the edge. Because 22 a day is 22 too many. again, reach out to them, let them know you're thinking about them, let them know you care, because you might be what keeps them off the edge. Don't let the hard days win, folks. And at least 22 times a day, the hard days are winning. Again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Had a great time tonight. Varek says, when it comes to Todd Standing, one thing's for sure: his passion for championing the Bigfoot subject as a whole is undeniable. That's true. I will not fault the man. He has gone a long way to try to get Bigfoot protected, but there is a kind of a cloud over some of his evidence. That doesn't necessarily change that he has really worked hard to try to protect them as a species, but it does call into question some of the evidence that he's collected. Folks, guys, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. LS420 says, I'd love a wild hunt AR. Go to sigwoarms.com, man. They will hook you up. And they do all kinds of awesome stuff. Robbie's been there. Robbie's been in there and checked them out. They got some awesome stuff. But folks, again, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Really appreciate you guys so much. It's been a great night, and I hope we've given you something to think about. You don't necessarily have to agree with us. Let's just hope that you walk away with this with questions, probably more than answers. But unfortunately, there are just more questions out there than there are answers, and we're trying to give logical answers to some of those questions. And whether you agree with us, disagree with us, or whatever, we're all looking for the answers to the same mysteries. And we appreciate you guys' ideas and theories. And you never know. I mean, we don't know who's right, because there are no experts in this field. And we're trying to attack this from an evidence-based perspective, just like we were both taught in law enforcement. So that's why we look for scientific explanations, because it speaks volumes to your credibility when you first thing you try to do is debunk it. And that's what we try to do. We try to look for explanations that explain why this happened. And if we can explain it scientifically without going into anything off the charts, then we've come a long way toward giving a more down-to-earth approach. Even if we prove that it was a hoax, or like when we go out and film, if we find nothing, we will tell you we found nothing. And I think there needs to be more of that in this field. Unfortunately, too many people are looking to get their 15 minutes of fame. And we will continue to do what we do. Whether we've got 10,000 subscribers or 10 million subscribers, this is who we are. This is how we're going to be. And we're not going to change. We're going to approach this as scientifically as we can and try to present as much credible data as we can possibly present, and continue to try to bring you guys shows like this. Miss Lene's right. Yeah, the mod squad, you guys kicked it in the butt tonight. You guys are awesome. We got some fantastic mods. You guys do a great job. And a big shout out to Miss Lene for finding that doll sheet video again. That is so freaking awesome. I've got to make sure I download and make copies of that, because we need to keep that one in the archive. So we can bring that up just for events like this. So again, folks, thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to wind the show down with a toast. It's something we've been doing for a while. And I'm going to let Robbie do the toast tonight. Doc ain't here, and I can't put him on the spot, but I can put Robbie on the spot. But the song we quote is from an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." And if you listen to the lyrics, it's not talking about saying goodnight to somebody at the end of the night at the bar. It's really saying goodnight to the ones we lost along the way. So I'll let Robbie take her from here.
Raise your glass with me. It doesn't have to be just whatever you're drinking. And follow along. It says, "But since and fell unto my lot, that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all." Good night, everybody. Slanja.
Good night. Slanja Ma, and we'll see you guys on Saturday night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAExMachiNation. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.